you're gonna do something, then like at least be somewhat dedicated to it. I do have to say, like, national merit, those types of awards that are like, you know, hundreds of people will have those. I actually thought it would be a negative. Hey everyone, my name's Rishab.
And I'm Shreya.
And we're both Harvard students. And we came across this video titled "Why Harvard Didn't Accept Me, the Perfect Student." And so as Harvard students, we kind of just wanted to talk about this, give some tips and tricks as well as some secrets for you guys about college admissions in general. So both Shreya and I got into Harvard, Stanford, and MIT, and our focus in high school was primarily around research, science fairs, but of course we do a ton of other extracurriculars. I did a lot of Boy Scouts, I had a nonprofit organization, I had a YouTube channel, a little bit of a business entrepreneurial side, along with, just a heavy spike in research, published several papers, won international awards. And Shreya?
Yeah, I did a lot of public speaking, speech and debate. I did lots of things with NHD, National History Day, also kind of community service type things.
And so without further ado, let's just start watching the video.
Valedictorian, 35 on the ACT, and a spike where I won several prestigious awards. I was everything an Ivy League wanted.
Okay, so let's just stop that right there. I do have to say that in this day and age, I feel like stats just aren't enough anymore, right? You'll see 36s, 1600s, pretty commonplace now, which is like crazy because you'll see news articles from 20 years ago where some kid got a 1600 and they're in like national news because of it.
But she did mention that she had several prestigious awards, so let's just like keep watching and see.
Okay, yeah.
Or so it seemed. Hey, it's Amy. Today I'll share with you the one biggest thing I realized that was missing from my application. When I look back, what a shame to those grades, stats, extracurriculars.
Wait, let's pause this right here. I know I keep pausing in 7 seconds and about 20 seconds. We will get to watch some of her video, but let's just take a look here. I mean, 4.85, that's like Shreya level right there. For those of you that don't know, wait, can you explain your high school stats real quick to the audience?
Yeah, so in high school, I
was valedictorian.
Yeah, I was valedictorian. I had a 4.88 GPA.
Oh, so just putting that out there was higher, okay.
Our class size was around 1,500 kids, so I think that helped me stand out a little bit.
So just looking at this honor section here, we do see the number one on the honor section is qualified for Amy, the math competition. Shreya, you qualified for Amy too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just looking here, like, that is the top award on the honors list, right? Did you put it on your honors list?
No, it was actually my additional information. It was somewhere crammed. Same with national merit finalists. I think I put.
Yeah. So I wanted to have something unique there, but I guess I just do have to point out that like that as your top award, I don't see like, you know, international awards on that. And just as Harvard students, I do see a lot of people like. Some of the people that we know, like #1 debater in the world, ourselves, like a lot of science fair experience at the international level. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, also just to provide some context, like we're not trying to like diss on Amy or anything, like these are very impressive. We're just like saying, just to provide some context of our kind of applications and what the applications of many Harvard students we've met. I spent, for example, a lot of time on speech and debate. Like throughout the year, it took up so much of my time, so many weekends. I think Rishab did it as well, so he can kind of attest to. Like that was a huge part of my high school ECs, and almost like most of my speech awards were also in my additional information. So yeah. Also, I think my top 3 honors were all international, and then the second 2 were national. So I'm also seeing like 3 out of the 5 are like state or regional, and then 2 of them are national. So already that kind of gives you context of like the types of awards that lots of Harvard kids are applying with.
Right.
And awards, if I had just packaged it into this way, my chances of getting into Harvard or any other Ivy League would have been a lot higher. Profile 1 is the STEM focused student.
Okay, this is basically us, right?
An MIT and Carnegie Mellon are looking for. That means.
Okay, wait, so pausing that right there, Caltech, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, what other STEM schools did you apply to? Harvard, I guess, kind of the STEM school, but
Yeah, so I applied to Stanford, MIT, Harvard, and then I applied to UT Austin and TD.
Okay. So those were all five?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, actually similar here because I applied Harvard, Stanford, MIT, Duke, and BU. So 5 schools as well. But yeah, I think that makes Harvard, Stanford, MIT. I don't know if you could call Harvard a STEM school just because of although econ is technically classified as a STEM major somehow, but yeah, I mean, strong in any department, really, those 3 schools, very big powerhouses in terms of research, funding, all of that.
Means your strengths spike. The things you show on your application are more math, science, engineering focused. Perhaps you did a lot of clubs and competitions. Things that likely matter less are volunteering, public speaking types of leadership. For example, I know someone who got into Caltech where they only focused on research and maybe a little bit of math. And even though a lot of you guys might be thinking, oh, volunteering is definitely another one of those check boxes. Leadership's definitely one of those check boxes for every top school. No, that student had 0 volunteering and they still got into Caltech.
I want to just make a comment that, yeah, I agree that I don't think those things are necessary to have when you apply to college, but I do think it looks really good. I know Rishab is has a few different opinions on leadership in school clubs, for example, but I definitely think demonstrating you have some interest in community service is really important. Especially when you're applying. I think if you're applying to MIT or Caltech, for example, they don't value that as much. But if you're going to apply to Harvard or even Stanford, to be honest, it's almost a must.
Yeah, I mean, I will say even MIT, right? They have a humanities department, they have social studies. So I would actually argue that maybe that advice only applies to Caltech. And I don't know about Caltech, to be honest, because we didn't apply there.
Yeah.
I thought the video was for Harvard mainly, so I guess we'll talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, I would say that the main issue I have with leadership and volunteering is that people do it because of that checkbox. And it's so obvious. They're just oh yeah, I was a member of NHS, I was a member of Rotary Club, Boy Scouts. It's very clear that they didn't try to achieve the highest level in any of those clubs. They weren't really going for it. It was just a checkbox, and they'll write it literally the application, 50 hours completed out of this thing. Nobody cares. No. I'm sure they do value it a little bit, right? They will say hey, the student's pretty well rounded, they participated in these. But in my opinion, if you're gonna do something, that at least be somewhat dedicated to it. And that's my take on the school club situation. So I would say instead of doing 3 school clubs, do 1 and show excellence in that club.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
I just think that the caliber of Harvard, Stanford, or MIT is just dramatically different than that of Caltech. Nothing against Caltech, but I think it's just so much more difficult to get into these other schools because students have demonstrated deep interests in leadership or community service. Not that you have to do that necessarily, but it has to be meaningful. So I wouldn't take the advice of Caltech and assume that it applies to Harvard because it's just 1,000 times more difficult to get into Harvard than Caltech.
Okay, I don't know about that. I would just say it's a different student that they might be looking for, as Amy said, where it's research and STEM, whatever. But yeah, I do agree that even amongst the research students that you will see at MIT, Stanford, Harvard, those research students that Amy is talking about, who may have just done research, those you won't see those. They will have done research at a higher level than most of those Caltech students, plus additional stuff. So I think that's I don't know about the number 1,000, but
The second type of profile is a more business, innovative oriented student. Schools that are more likely to find students that fit this mold are Stanford, Berkeley. To fit what profile 2 schools are looking for, you need to be more entrepreneurial and show in your essays and activities that you're being innovative, thinking outside the box. In particular, that you're innovatively helping other people.
Okay, I will say that she just said a little bit earlier in the video, that there's no cookie cutter thing, there's not one thing you can do, but there are these different type of profiles, but then proceeds to say that oh, Stanford and Berkeley are looking for innovatively helping people, or they want entrepreneurial focus. I would just say that that's not true. like Stanford and Berkeley are huge schools. Like they have tons of different departments. You can be an English only kid, zero entrepreneurial thing. So I think just like putting a label on it that this school is this way or not is like a little bit misleading. But I do also get what she's saying. Like everyone knows Stanford has huge Silicon Valley ties. Everyone there is trying to do startups, but that's not the only thing that you have to do. So I would say that this advice is a little bit problematic.
Yeah, I can see that. I think really all these schools, what they're looking for is just intellectual vitality. Like
a Harvard profile. Number 3, which is more public speaking, leadership, government, involved in policies, that type of student. Schools you'd probably think of in this third bucket would be Harvard and Yale. To summarize that real quick, we have 1, 2, 3 profiles. 1 is your MIT Caltech, 2 is your Stanford, 3 is your Harvard. So when you're thinking about your fit for a school, which is a very important aspect because the school is looking at how well you fit in for them, you want to consider what kind of student you fit, what kind of profile.
Okay, so I think being students who both got into Harvard, Stanford, and MIT, we are not all 3 profiles. Like I don't see myself analyst, entrepreneur, and diplomat. Although I guess I did do some activities in all 3, but I think like where this gets a little bit misleading once again is like Harvard is not necessarily looking for public speaking or that stuff. I had public speaking, but that was like my 10th activity on my EC list, which was like winning state speech and debate. Like I don't think Harvard really even considered that in my admissions file based off my understanding of that. Like I think they mainly focused on my research and that stuff. So I would say that this like bucketing and grouping is a little bit unhelpful.
yeah, I definitely would have to agree with that. I think like for me, my profile probably fits more in the like prototypical MIT applicant, but I also would not like, that didn't stop me from applying to Stanford and Harvard, and ultimately I choose to commit here. So clearly, like, you shouldn't just follow this stereotype, I guess.
Are you within these main 3? There's probably more outside these 3, but these are the main ones for the big top schools that we generally think of. In these profiles, you can see that the weight of the different activities and things on your application is different. In profile 1, the weight of volunteering is low, while the weight of research and awards is higher. And in profile 3, the weight of volunteering and specifically nonprofits or changing something in your school, making an impact through that way, would be higher than the weight of that in profile number 1.
Okay, so what I will say is that I think these are like fine profiles to have, but I wouldn't associate them with specific schools.
Why is it that these schools are looking for this type of student? That profile aligns with someone's comment noting that you have to see that there's hardship in the world, or you have to experience some hardship in the world such that you want to help other people, give back to your community, so you show you have a heart and passion, and therefore will help the world in the future. This is also why your and my stereotype of Harvard loving students who help kids in third world countries is right. Your perception.
Okay, I think beyond all the nonsense that you have to like have faced some sort of hardship to want to give back to the community.
Nonsense, that's a strong word.
I think there is actually some truth to the fact that Harvard does like to see that you are invested in giving back to something bigger than yourself. There's definitely a reason why a lot of RSI kids who have like very, successful profiles in the STEM field, like lots of STEM awards, spoken at like all these conferences, like lots of like just national, international awards in science. There's a reason why not all of them get into Harvard, I think. And it's because maybe that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I would argue it's more so that like Harvard is basically not looking for one type of student. They're looking for students who have excelled in various different fields and then basically choosing the top 1% of each of those fields to create a class. That's how I view it. So when we look at the Math 55 kids, I can guarantee that half of them had like basically close to no volunteering leadership. But then you look at students like Amy, for instance, who are like math kids, analyst type of profile, who are saying, oh, I didn't get into Harvard. Why is that? Oh, it's because they're looking for a volunteering nonprofit. I don't think so, because the Math 55 kids have similar profiles to Amy, where the main thing I'm sure top 5 awards, all math stuff, but literally it's like, you know, IMO, like USMO level awards, right, who are getting into Harvard. And so I would say it's like more so just the top caliber of all of those things. Like I have a friend who's at Caltech. I think that, you know, he did science fairs and that type of thing. He probably could have gotten into Harvard and Stanford and MIT if it was just a little bit higher of caliber. And I know there's gonna be some people who will be like, oh, Caltech is equally as high. And I think in certain disciplines, some research fields, it probably is. In fact, it's probably, for a lot of STEM fields, probably has better research than Harvard does, besides like life sciences, neuroscience, I would say. But I think in general, that advice sort of applies, where it's like Harvard is going to take the top students, like kind of just cut off the top of all these different disciplines and put them into one class.
School, I'm like, I want to help them. I want to do something. That begs the question of, why didn't I spend more time helping the less fortunate if I know there are so many less fortunate out there? My hundreds of hours volunteering at a hospital were not enough. I spent more time on academics, and here's why. Solving the climate crisis, finding a cure for a skin disease like the one that I had when I was a kid. These all require you to be very smart, well educated, and have a lot of knowledge. So how I thought about helping the world is that I'm gonna increase my human capital as much as possible by doing well in school, getting all that knowledge, instead of, you know, volunteering and doing my own labor at these food banks. And then in the future, when I can use that knowledge, then maybe I can create something that will help thousands of.
I think that obviously it's not like a bad thing to be volunteering at these places and doing these things. Like, it is very notable. It's just so common. Like, literally every person will, it's just not unique enough, I think. Like, you want to, for community service, in my opinion, find a niche where that's like something that's very unique and something that your past experience and background makes you uniquely equipped to go into that, and then just go for it.
I understand that students who are high schoolers might not have the knowledge to like make a substantial difference, but showing that you care in some way, like whether that's spreading awareness in your community through some 5K jogs and like teaching people about that issue, or, you know, going to a hospital and volunteering specifically for that condition where it's like very unique and niche, and it's something that you can continue in your life in college. I think that extends beyond just college admissions, but it's more of like your purpose. And that's why perhaps colleges, you know, choose to take students who are doing that type of stuff beyond just like racking up volunteer hours and getting presidential gold award or whatever.
You need to spell it out for them that you love, LOVE, helping people, if that's what you're trying to show. You want to be transparent and explicit in fitting that profile that school wants. It's not just about building a great application and doing all the best things to get into a top school. To get into different schools that look for different things, you need to frame your application in different ways.
Okay, this is actually one of the best things I think she said in this video. Shreya, you can talk more about that, but I just do want to point out, just like, I think that is kind of true, especially the point of like showing, not telling. I think telling stories about like why you are uniquely positioned to help people in that way, like let's say, as she's saying, targeting the Harvard profile, or why you are so interested in that specific problem for Caltech, MIT type of schools, even if you use her framework, right? I think that that is like great advice to show and fit that kind of like framing. You know, take all the things you've done and frame it in a way that, you know, it shows that you are this type of applicant. Yeah, and I think beyond even just the education here, right? Like, if you are, yeah, exactly. If you are a student like Amy who's interested in learning about something and like doing really well in school so that you can one day tackle that thing, it's beyond the classroom, right? Like we see at Harvard Institute of Politics, they have like tons of different projects, like PBHA, all those like volunteering organizations, tons of different projects and various things, homelessness, like all this stuff. Tons of different areas where you uniquely can solve problems. Then beyond that, research opportunities, tons of research fellowships, internships with professors here who are doing work and everything. Beyond just like very sciencey things where it's like, hey, I need to have like graduate level understanding of this topic. I recently joined a neuroethics type of project, and there, like, I don't really know much about law, or I don't know much about like ethics or philosophy before, but like being able to, you know, like I was personally interested to learn more about that. So showing that like, hey, I'm taking advantage of those opportunities, I think is exactly why Harvard may have chosen me, because I was uniquely positioned to like demonstrate that interest later in college. So I think, yeah, to some degree there is like showing that on your application so that later when you join these schools, you can be a part of those clubs, be a part of those organizations that they thought that you might be suitable for when you applied.
What I was genuinely pursuing is not what they like. Maybe I wanted to think of some cure for eczema. Even if that's helping the world in some way, Harvard isn't the place to do that. It would be like Caltech.
Okay, wait,
That's totally
this is just, yeah, Harvard has one of the best life sciences programs in the world. It has more publications, I guarantee, in like dermatology related stuff, all the affiliated hospitals than any other school, way more than Caltech, for instance. And so I don't agree with this piece of advice.
Literally all like some of the top 20 hospitals, research facilities are all in Boston and Harvard affiliated. So I wouldn't say that you definitely can do all this research at Harvard.
Yeah.
If not better. Yeah.
MIT. And the proof is that I wasn't even planning on going to Harvard in the first place if I got in. I could have wrapped my application in a pretty Harvard crimson wrapping paper, but underneath would inherently still be a math, science, engineering person.
Okay, we gotta respect the creative thinking and planning that went into this video. You know, we're just sitting here on, we need something better. Wait, in fact, just like Amy didn't wrap herself in the Harvard crimson application foil thingy, I'm gonna wrap myself in my Harvard sweatshirt because, you know, Harvard students, and also for the thumbnail.
I won from a math competition. And I explained in this video actually how I ended up loving Caltech and being super happy there. You end up where suits you.
Okay, I love that overall message. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think some of the specifics there about like profiles, applying that is like not the best way to frame your application and approach this whole thing, especially if you're a freshman who's like deciding what activities you want to get into. Like, please don't feel pressured that like, oh, I want to go to Harvard, so I need to like do volunteering and I need to show that I went to like literally the Quora post that she showed on the screen, right? Like going to Africa to help people. Like, you don't need to do that. You should do what your passion is, what excites you. And if you don't know what that is, then keep exploring until you figure that out. You have plenty of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there just is somewhat of a fallacy to say that like you're inherently an MIT student or you're a Stanford student, you're a Harvard student. No, like students get into all three of these schools and ultimately it's a really tough decision. Like, I don't know about you, but I was really debating between these schools. Like, they're all excellent. So like there's no thing like, oh, like I'm fit for this, like that's my profile, so I should apply to this school, or like I'm more likely to get in. Like, that's not true. Like, I don't know about Rishab, but when I was doing my applications for all these schools, like I reused a lot of essays and
no, same here,
like stuff like that. So it's not like, you know, like I didn't even try and frame my application differently for Stanford versus MIT versus Harvard. They're all inherently looking for the same thing, which is that you're gonna like have a greater impact.
Right. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed having Shreya help me react to some of these videos, be sure to leave a comment down in the description below letting us know that you want to see more. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.